get you up in the morning, nothing will. Welcome to Facebook Live on barnburner.ca. This is Rudy Reyes coming to you live on barnburner.ca. Make sure you go to iQuest Media for all your website needs. I'll be on here for at least a half hour here today. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I'm live on Facebook. This will be a podcast, but it will be posted on therudogshow.com. So I wanted to thank you all for tuning in. And sit for a spell. We're going to talk about a little Peyton Manning and rumors surrounding him entering the Browns' bosom, if you will, if that's even plausible, if that will work. Recently, Tony Dungy was on with Dan Patrick, and they were talking about how the season, for all intents and purposes, is in jeopardy at 0-8 for the Cleveland Browns. So what's more interesting is that Peyton Manning could be very well sitting in the front office for the Cleveland Browns. What makes this really interesting is that Jeff Haslam does have a relationship and has had a relationship with the Manning family for quite some time, and we'll go into all those details. Anyway, like I said, a lot of issues surrounding the Browns season. Of course, they do get a couple weapons back within the next few weeks here. We're going to talk about all that. But Tony Dungy jokingly stated that he could very well be interested in working under Peyton Manning, but again, circumstances all have to be set in motion. Of course, Tony Dungy residing in Clearwater, Florida. So he had jokingly stated that the Browns would have to move to Florida. Well, it would be the first time the Cleveland Browns have actually moved away from their locale. They disappeared, became the team that everybody wanted them to be this year, but it hasn't quite worked out that way. Again, quarterback carousel. I don't know if that's all Hugh Jackson's fault, but I know that there's a lot of issues surrounding how the Browns have recently botched a lot of various things. We're going to go into that. Again, there's tons of information here. What's more interesting is that Haslam had nothing but sincerity and sincere words for Peyton Manning as well as the organization itself. So when you look at the long-term relationship that Haslam has had, and of course Sashi Brown with Peyton Manning and the family, it just makes you wonder, how is this football season going to turn out? Does Peyton Manning become part of the front office? I don't see him as a coach. I don't necessarily agree with the coach aspects because not to suggest that Peyton Manning is cerebral enough for a coaching position, but I think that his nature is better off being put in the front office for the Cleveland Browns. They've tried, Browns 1.0. Maybe there's a 2.0 in the future for this organization, who has clearly botched everything that has gone their way, from drafting quarterbacks number one overall, drafting down and acquire players like Jabril Peppers, and getting Deshaun Kaiser in under center for the Cleveland Browns. A lot more questions for this Browns team, but again, when are there not questions for this Browns team? When you look at the Browns overall, from an organizational standpoint, they certainly need help. They need a reboot. They need a boot in the front office. They need to boot some people out of that front office, and we're going to go into that as well. What's really interesting is that when you think of the Browns, you think of bad. And I don't mean to suggest that the Browns will always be bad. At least they've been bad for the last 15, 20 years. That's before, and obviously there's a step between Bernie Kosar and Jim Brown, Hall of Famer. But I look at this type of relationship that has gone on in the Brown system, and I think there's still some good old boy action going on, meaning that you're going to have a guy who will come in and say, you know what, this is a brother, uncle, sister, cousin, what have you, and the Browns would say, well, if you say so, let's go ahead and hire him. I think that's a bad decision. I think it's a bad way to do business. Good old boy system doesn't work in the NFL. Clearly does not work for the Browns as well. I think Peyton Manning would be a fresh new approach, and make sure you go to iQuestMedia.ca for all your website needs. They are the place to be. Go to barburner.ca. You'll see a perfect example of that as well. But I look at this system. I look at the front office. I just don't know that it's working all that well, not only for long-term growth. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. I look for an opposed system here in the Browns organization. I mean, how much worse can you get than 0-8? Well, that's 0-9. And every game thereafter is 0-9, 0-10, 0-11. They're setting themselves up to tank for the first overall draft pick between them and the San Francisco 49ers. Biggest question is which team will get a win first? Big question. More questions that answers at this point for either organization. We're talking about the Browns today, right here on the Rude Dog Show on barnburner.ca. I've taken control over the Barnburner Facebook fan page for at least another 25 minutes. So make sure you tune in, check it out. Go to iQuestmedia.ca for all your website needs. I think when I look at Peyton Manning, I think of somebody who's done it with two different organizations. Yes, there are two different head coaches, and there are two different type offenses, but Peyton Manning just made it work. He's not the guy where you make demands of him for player acquisition. He's clearly going to ask you and suggest and say, well, this is what we need. I need a wide receiver. I need an offensive lineman. This guy's not doing too well. I need a guard. He makes those suggestions almost like a LeBron James, as when you put him in that kind of conversation where somebody of his nature, his stature, is going to ask the front office and say, look, this is what we need. I need you to make it so. We need to start winning. Of course, Cleveland Cavaliers are a whole nother story. Speaking of teams in Cleveland right now at 4-6 in the NBA are the Cavaliers. But I look at the Browns and I think to myself, they have designed pieces to be a part of a much bigger puzzle, much better puzzle. The problem is that they have basically washed away all the remnants of stability within the organization. Peyton Manning could bring that back into position, but how could you not want to work for a guy like Peyton Manning? I mean, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever. When you look at Peyton Manning, he's done so many great things in Indianapolis with the Indy organization, and I think he would work very well with the scouting department. I think has also been in lack for quite some time for the Browns. Now, I look at Peyton Manning, I think to myself, man, if this guy can't get it done, and the Browns organization, if in fact that's what happens, then it's not his fault. He's obviously been given a mess, and if I was Peyton Manning, I'd want stake in the organization. Whether or not it's worth as much money as the next AFC North organization between the Bengals and Ravens and Steelers, that remains to be seen. But I do know if I was Peyton Manning, I would ask for that. Why? Because it's needed. It's needed for him. It's needed for peace of mind, because now he has ownership in the system. He has ownership of what he's trying to accomplish there for the Cleveland Browns. Now, there were a lot of rumors coming out a couple weeks ago, and there has been a lot of conversation surrounding his visit. Why did he visit to Cleveland? Why did he go into the front offices to speak to Haslam? And, of course, Tony Dungy kind of making light of that conversation. But I look at Peyton Manning, and I have to agree with Tony Dungy in the fact that I see Peyton Manning as a part of the organization in the front office. I believe that's where he can be most effective. Why? Because, again, he goes into a draft room and he calls a 2000. Let's just say, for example, the Browns get their first overall draft pick. Well, what happens? They go after a quarterback. Let's hope they don't. But if they do, they do. I just think that Deshaun Kaiser needs the pieces around him in order to get him off the ground, to be the quarterback that they really drafted him to be. I think they're lacking offensive line. They're lacking wide receiver weapons. And of course, in that wide receiving core, they're not getting a whole lot of help. They could be getting some more help as Josh Gordon enters the next couple of weeks. It's a long process, but Josh Gordon's been part of a very long process in of itself, trying to get back into the NFL. I think Peyton Manning will be great. Another agreement point with Tony Dungy. I believe Peyton Manning will be a fantastic component lined up with this Cleveland Browns front office. Why? Because he knows what he's looking for. He's done this for a very long time in the quarterback position, telling quarterback coaches, telling offensive coordinators, this is what we need to do. He's the first guy to enter and the last guy to leave. That is who Peyton Manning is. Had the pleasure of meeting him at 2017 ESPYs. Didn't really have a whole lot of conversations surrounding football. He was on his way out after hosting and didn't get a chance to ask him about his football aspirations after retiring from the NFL. But I'm sure that if you look at Peyton Manning, when you look at what he's trying to accomplish, and if in fact he does become a part of this Cleveland front office, I look for him to be absolutely solid. I like the direction this is going. If it's true, it's true. If it's not, it's not. Of course, Sashi Brown quoted as saying that he's not going to comment in the arena he was in, which is a post-game press conference. Of course, Sashi Brown always the one trying to be under the radar. But let's face it, this is a dumpster fire team. I forgot my marshmallows, and I'm not going to make any s'mores because they need some more players. They need some more scouting, better scouting. Yeah, granted, they do have the ex-Indianapolis Colts scouting chief, or director rather. But I think that when you start 0-8 for a second consecutive season, when you try to reboot a reboot, now you're going for a reboot with a 2.0 possibly in the Browns front office. This is Rudy Reyes on barnburner.ca. Go to iquestmedia.ca for all of your website needs. They do great work. barnburner.ca. Go check it out. That's where I'm at right now on Facebook Live. So I look at the situation right now and I think to myself, it couldn't get any worse at 0-8. So what if they take the entire season? But what do they do with the draft pick? Do they draft down? Do they draft, back and say, you know what? I want to trade my first overall pick. I need to get a couple more players. I need an offensive lineman. I need a couple wide receivers. I need some guys who can certainly do much more. And of course, recently, when Peyton Manning was asked as the GM, possibly the Browns, maybe Titans, maybe LA Rams, I don't know, but I'll tell you this much. Whatever team's offering ownership first is certainly what he's going to take. There's no question. There is no doubt about that at all. And I think he can pick up where other GMs have failed. Why? Because of the lack of scouting. We were talking about wide receivers and how even wide receivers alone, it's not going to be the magic potion to get this Browns team back to form, back to some type of winning way, at least get to some type of 500 season for the Cleveland Browns, and at least make them much more competitive than they have in recent memory. So recently there was an article by Josh Gordon by GQ magazine with Josh Gordon in it. Josh Gordon stating that he would drink consistently, whether it was collegiately or in the NFL, and it was either smoking weed or drinking alcohol to get his motor running early in the morning. Quoted, I loved these little pre-made shots. I used to love Grand Marnier. I could drink it down smooth. I could usually drink a lot, Gordon told GQ magazine. But if it wasn't that, it might be a whiskey or something. I would drink something like half a glass or a couple shots to try and warm my system up, basically, to get the motor running. That's what I would do for games. It makes you wonder how much recovery Josh Gordon has actually gone through right now. And I look at him and I think to myself, how can this be even remotely possible? How can a guy who exits college into the NFL taking those types of bad habits and still being able to function? Well, sort of. Josh Gordon fell off the wagon quite some time ago. I wish him well. Probably one of the better success stories in the NFL. But is it the right team that Josh Gordon needs to be on? Is the Browns the team that needs him the most, that he can really thrive in? Are there any other players there that can attribute to making those bad habits resurface? Time will tell. We're certainly going to find that out. But I like the move by Josh Gordon in that he's going to stick with the team who acquired him. He wants to do the best for them. Whether or not the Browns stick with him is another story. A road to recovery can be a very long and arduous one. But I can tell you, when you look at a guy like Josh Gordon and the amount of skill, athleticism that he has, I can't even imagine what he would be like. I haven't seen him with no alcohol in his system. I haven't seen him play on the field without weed in his system. But then again, nobody knew this until now. So if he is good at that point, even with alcohol or weed in his system, how much better can he be without it? That's by far the biggest question that needs to be brought to light here. This is Rudy Reyes on barnburner.ca on a Facebook Live, and of course podcast forthcoming. Go to iquestmedia.ca for all your website needs. They can handle what you have and make it better. So why not? Better is better, right? That's what it's all about. Look, I want to talk about this whole botched A.J. McCarron situation by the Cleveland Browns. And again, I don't understand the lack of logic. I don't even understand how this came to fruition. We talk about a guy who has shown glimpses of greatness while guys like Andy Dalton have been out for a significant time. But I look at this and think to myself, where's A.J. McCarron going? Where was he going to go? Well, the answer was he was going to go to the Browns system. I couldn't even imagine how much more impossible this could have been when you bring the lack of miscommunication, the disconnection between coaches, front office, everybody involved in this entire process of acquiring A.J. McCarron, whoever that is all because somebody didn't press send on a fax machine. Maybe there was paperwork that wasn't sent in a timely manner. At least that's from my understanding. Or was it sent in advance? Was this a botched deal from the beginning? Was this something that the Browns just did not want to do? I mean, we weren't there. We don't know. But I look at A.J. McCarron and I think to myself, the guy is good. But obviously when you look at Hugh Jackson, he wasn't really in the mood to talk about it, nor should he be. I mean, it was something that was completely botched. He's probably shaking his head, scratching it. Maybe it was part of the process. I don't know. I was not there. But I'll be honest with you, he's wanting to move forward. He's wanting to be progressive, not thinking about what happened in the past because he wants to focus on the future. 0-8, not much of a future there. Could the Browns get a win this season? I'm not trying to be cynical here. I'm trying to be honest. Can the Browns get a win this season? I think so. I think that when you look at possibly getting back Josh Gordon and a couple other players, it just makes you wonder, is this going to be possible? Is this going to work for their system? Are they going to find a way to acquire those pieces? And of course, there are still quarterbacks that haven't even been picked up yet that are still in free agency, waiting to be picked up by an NFL team. Of course, this adds to the laundry list of quarterbacks that have started for the Cleveland Browns. I think Sashi Brown did his absolute best in trying to be patient, trying to understand what needs to happen for the Browns organization. Much more than that, they'll get to Burl Pepper's back, been dealing with a toe injury, and of course, Larry Ogunjobi with a groin problem, as well as Coleman, who's been dealing with a hand problem as well. I think the Cleveland Browns system can be fixed. Question is how deep are you willing to go? Are you just willing to scratch the surface? Are you willing to just say, you know what, we're going to put in this amount of time, we're going to put in this kind of work, we're going to only do on the surface clean, not deep, but a surface clean of getting rid of those components that are not going to work for the system. That could work out. However, the problem is that when you do that, you're not diving into the fiber inside of the Browns organization. You're not able to really overturn all those stones that need to be overturned to say, you know what, what's underneath here? We need to get rid of it. It's not very good. We have to dispose of it. Sorry, checks in the mail, and we'll let you know if we ever need you back. And, of course, their thought process is insane. That statement is, we're not going to let you back at all because, well, we don't want you back. I think the Browns have a long way to go. There's no easy fix. There's no magic potion. There's no spell that can be cast to fix what's broken in the Browns system. But what's interesting is that the Browns themselves go through these cycles where they're better maybe every 4 years, and then they just kind of fall off the wagon every fifth year. But I can tell you this much, when you look at certain components, like Josh Gordon, who were there beforehand, he had through 8 games, he had 71 catches, 845 yards, 2 touchdowns at the wideout position. I don't know where you're going to see Josh Gordon play. I don't know where he's going to line up. I don't know when he's going to be back, but I can tell you this much. Once he becomes 100%, and I don't mean just 100% from the coach's approval, say, you know what, you're ready to go, you're ready to play, but I'm talking physically, mentally, and emotionally ready to go, to put himself back on the field, to make his presence known, and to make some type of impact in a season that at this point practically looks lost. The Browns, in order to go 500, they would need to win the next 8 games to be at 500. There are other teams that are a lot worse than that, could find themselves in a very negative situation prior to. But if the Browns could do that, which I don't see even remotely possible, but if they can get back to maybe 5, 6 wins, maybe 7, I'm probably pushing the envelope here, but I think that you're going to see a lot more growth and certainly something to build on heading into the 2018 NFL season. But again, you can't continue to draft guys, not acquire what you need, and in turn be okay with what you have, because at this point they haven't been really happy with anything that they've had, because they find a way to either botch it, mess it up, or not get those right pieces that they need. But again, there's so many aspects to this organization that really need to be looked at, that really need to be diagnosed, that really need to be looked at in a microscope and through a microscope to suggest that the changes need to be made a lot sooner than later. The pain could be, hard up front. It's like pulling out a toenail. It's not ready to get pulled out, right? It hurts. It's painful. It almost turns your toe into an arthritic state, and then all of a sudden, you're good to go. Biggest question, whether or not the Browns can get it going in the next couple of seasons, that remains to be seen. This is Rudy Reyes on barnburner.ca. The podcast will be posted on the RudDogShow.com. And make sure you go to iQuestMedia.ca to help get your web questions answered. iQuestMedia.ca. I like the fact that they're even talking to Peyton Manning and that Peyton Manning would even be entertaining this at this point. I mean, he's busy. He has, commercials with Nationwide is on your side. He, working with Brad Paisley on those commercials. He has other television projects. He has interviews, things of that nature. He's a busy guy. Biggest question for him is whether or not he can see himself sitting for 20 hours a day going through paperwork and personnel packages and trying to do some hiring and some releasing and things of that nature. Whether or not he wants that responsibility is a whole other story. I don't know that I would want that responsibility. Right now, he's got the easy life. But everybody who's ever played in the NFL, at least the guys that I've interviewed here on the show, have made one statement, and it's been very clear in that they have an itchy trigger finger. They want to get back into the process. They want to get back into football. And I think when I look at guys like Peyton Manning, he loves football. That's his thing. It's been his thing for his entire life. So why not give something to him that he could want? And if you give him ownership in the organization, ownership in making some decision-making processes, he wants a little bit of power here and there. You have nothing to lose by giving it to him. Biggest question is whether or not Peyton Manning can lead the scouting crew to uncover what they need to uncover, get the guys that they need to get that fit a new system. I don't mean their system. The current system is obviously not working for them. But in a new system, a new, refreshed mental state of wanting to be there. Right now, if you ask any player in the NFL if they want to go play for the Cleveland Browns, their answer is probably going to be, well, no, not really, but if that's my last resort, I'm going to go play there. That's the reality. That's the real question, is whether or not any player right now would want to play in the system. And honestly, I just don't see it. Whether it be any position player, quarterback, wide receiver. And I'm not picking on the Browns. I'm really talking about that there could be some solutions surrounding what they need. And what they need right now is leadership. They need to do a cleansing. They need to boot a 2.0 for the Browns. I don't know if they're going to make it a likelihood. I don't know if it'll even become a reality that Peyton Manning becomes the general manager for the Cleveland Browns. But I can assure you this. Peyton Manning will make a difference in that organization if, in fact, this is all true and accurate. Of course, Sashi Brown doesn't want to say anything about it. Hugh Jackson obviously doesn't want to say anything about it. He probably is the last one to know. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's so many issues in the Browns organization, because one person doesn't want to talk to the other. One hand doesn't want to talk to the right hand. The left foot doesn't want to talk to the right foot. Until that can be solved, you're not going to see any type of fluidity. You're not going to see anybody who's going to take ownership in what they do. And that includes the players, because right now I think they just decided to tank out the rest of the season. But I can honestly tell you this much. Unless they make those changes on a long-term effect, you're not going to see them become even remotely in a conversation where you could say, well, Browns going to the playoffs. Right now, if that was to be the reality, that wouldn't work out. People would probably be laughing in your face thinking, really? Seriously? Browns playoffs? Not likely. And I obviously would have to agree with that. This is Rudy Reyes on the Rude Dog Show on barnburner.ca. Have a couple minutes left here. I wanted to give a shout out to any company or organization that needs me for voiceovers. I can certainly send out a sample of that. Email me at rudyreyes@theruddogshow.com. I take those seriously, as well as for any other general email, any other questions, anything that you have, any questions you want me to ask on air. Go and send me an email to Rudy Reyes at therudedogshow.com. And go to therudedogshow.com for all types of great interviews, past and present, with players. Tomorrow's going to be very, very interesting. And I'll go into that later, so stay tuned for the Instagram or barburner.ca post for a guy named Tucker. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. You should know what I'm talking about. If you're paying attention to my Twitter, go through me, follow at RudeDogReyes, and throw me a like on my Facebook fan page. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the support as well. You can find my fan page at The Rude Dog Show on Facebook. This is Rudy Reyes on The Rude Dog Show on barnburner.ca. Make sure you go to iQuestMedia.ca to resolve and or create the website of your dreams. Thank you so much. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll be on a podcast at 1:30 talking to, Sean Merrimer, talking about a code drive and all types of other things he has going on right now in his life. And so stay tuned for that one. This is Rudy Reyes on The Rude Dog Show on barnburner.ca. I'll talk to you guys soon.